Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Oh man.
Alright, so let's go ahead and get into it. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is...
The Geek for Fun.
And Steve.
So tonight we're here to talk about a bit of an out-of-place one. We usually save the scary movies for Horror Month, but Steve just had to talk about what?
Alright, so today we are talking about the 1994 final film in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise proper before the remake, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. You and I were talking about this, I want to say on a LEGO stream one of those days that we were doing the Green Lantern Mogo build. And you and I had both mentioned that we both really liked this movie. But the main reason I wanted to talk about this one is actually a little bit more timely, because last month, or this month, or sometime this year, Scream 7 came out. And Scream 7's production history was a nightmare. It started with the main actress from the previous film making a post about the genocide in Gaza, and then Paramount fired her from the movie. That caused the director to eventually leave, and then Jenna Ortega, who was in the previous film, also left, and initially she said it was because of scheduling conflicts, but then later she clarified that it was because of the fact that they fired a pro-Palestinian actress. And so everything about the movie just had to pivot, and it pivoted to bringing Neve Campbell back as Sidney Prescott. And I was watching some of the pressers, because, you know, they play them before movies and theaters and stuff. And every time they interviewed anyone about Scream, they would just talk about, like, this is a movie that's going to honor Wes Craven's memory, and this is about continuing Wes Craven's franchise. And they kept trying to like evoke Wes Craven's memory to sell this corporate slop. And it just made me think, and one, it was so disgusting and so blatant every time they did it. But two, it was so antithetical to what made Wes Craven a great filmmaker. And so I was thinking, well, now I need a good excuse to watch New Nightmare, because I think New Nightmare is the most Wes Craven movie of Wes Craven's whole career. So I really wanted to talk about it. I've seen this movie like half a dozen times. I love it. I think it's the best Nightmare on Elm Street movie. And I think it's really fascinating as a piece of media about what Wes Craven cares about and what he regretted about making movies like Nightmare on Elm Street and all the real world influences that went into making this. So I really wanted to talk about that stuff in the context of Scream 7, but I really love this movie. I think it's fantastic, so curious to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, no, it definitely remains my favorite of the Nightmare films. It's the thing I realized, because you and I were talking about it a little bit, the thing I realized is I don't remember, for liking Freddy the most, I don't remember a ton of stuff about the individual Nightmare movies. Like a couple of the kills, a couple of the one-liners, sure, but like I could not tell you the plot of most of those films. This is the only one that like really sticks with me. I think my take on like the Nightmare films is I like Freddy Krueger as a character. I like the concept, but the films aren't particularly good, which is I think pretty stock opinion for most horror franchises. But this one, like, just really stuck in my head. I've not watched it a ton, but it definitely was my standout favorite because of just how bizarre it is, how, like, cool the meta-narrative of it all is. That moment that really stuck out to me this time was like, oh, God, that's so perfect, is how far are you in the script, Wes? Until is where Danny tries to give himself to God or whatever the line is. I was like, yes, that's so good. Oh man. So I just this one remains my favorite of the Nightmare films.
So this one, I remember I had seen like clips of it, and I'd seen the Freddy design, because kind of like Ian, Freddy Krueger's a character I thought was a cool concept. I've always been more of a Jason guy, but I do appreciate Freddy. I do think he's cool to have as a slasher character, but the movies themselves, like I watched the first Nightmare on Elm Street, I watched Dream Warriors, and they never really grabbed me in any way. Behind like some creative practical effects here and there, but like the actual narratives and the story, everything I thought was really kind of underwhelming. And I didn't think Freddy himself, despite having a really scary concept, ever lived up to that. So this one I remember a few years ago I tried, and for one reason or another I never got very far into it, like literally the first 5 minutes. So I think I must have been interrupted or something. But I finished this one last night, and man, I didn't like this one either. I didn't. I think it's interesting to talk about because Wes Craven is a director that like I think has really interesting ideas, and I like one of the later Scream movies he did. I think it's like Scream 4 or something. Yeah, that one I actually thought is probably my favorite movie of his that he's done. Just because I thought that he's kind of known at that point, especially, and then in this one for doing the kind of like meta textual like take on horror and doing like how it affects the real people and stuff. And I thought that one was kind of the perfection of what he was going for, where actually it still felt compelling and the performances were still intriguing while it's still doing a commentary on his own legacy. This one, I can see this is where he's like getting the idea out there, and like there's some interesting bits here and there, like Robert Englund, I think when he appears as Robert Englund, I think is pretty compelling. But everything else, man, I'm just like, the performances are not good. Like, the effects here are...
Is a lot of people are just playing themselves.
Right.
I know, but it's not even... It's still, like, it's not... And I know it's, like, a little much to ask it for, like, to give it, like, a Blair Witch Project level of just, like, super authentic, these are just real people type performances. I'm not necessarily acting for that, but, like... past a certain point, and I'm sure it's intentional, it just goes as campy as the original Nightmare movie, and I'm like, I get that's what it's going for, and I get like you're trying to talk about it, it's not effective to me when I don't like that kind of movie, and I don't like how it's executed in this one. And we can talk about it more, but like this one I was disappointed just because when I hear the idea of like, oh, this Freddy's in the real world and he's not as fucking jokey this time, he means business, I'm like, okay, let's see where we go. And like, was he that different? Like, I don't know. Yeah,
I would say so.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think remember in context too, so like I know you guys said you don't remember a ton about like the other previous Nightmare on Elm Street movies before this, but because I'm a crazy person, I couldn't just watch this movie when I had the mood. I had to watch all of them in order. So I watched every single Nightmare movie over the span of like 3 days. But before this... before this is in 91, it's Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, which was supposed to be the last movie in the franchise. And that one has a scene where one of Freddy's nightmare dreams for a guy is a video game, and he's literally just controlling a joystick.
Power.
Yeah, and he's just bouncing him up and down rooms and stuff. Like, the Freddy was at his peak jokey before this, and that's part of why New Nightmare tried to not make him more grounded, but tried to bring more of the traditional horror elements back to it. I know for a lot of people, the meta-narrative stuff works better in Scream than it does in New Nightmare. But
okay,
I think...
Can I step in there real quick?
Yeah.
Because for me, it's the exact opposite. Fuck Scream. Fuck all of the Screams, and fuck everyone that likes Scream better than New Nightmare, particularly Alfie.
There's only one Scream movie that I thought was decent. I don't like the first Scream movie either.
I watched Scream 1 after years of putting it off because everyone told me, oh no, this is like New Nightmare but way better. I'm like, and then I finally watched Scream 1. I'm like, the fuck are you guys talking about? This is the most bitch ass killer ever. Everyone fucks up Ghostface so bad.
To be fair, everyone fucks up Freddy too. Like,
Yeah,
the first Nightmare movie, the last 20 minutes is just Home Alone against Freddy.
No, you're right. But, like, it's just the one character fucking up Freddy. But at that point, not everyone else fucked up Freddy. It's only Nancy that really fucks up Freddy. The other, like, characters as the movies go on, you know, some characters I remember, like, get a lick in or something. But then Freddy comes back and just, you know, humiliates them. But just Ghostface just gets his ass beat all up and down the first movie.
In Nightmare 4, I think it is, there's a character... Basically, Nightmare 4 is like they just wanted to make a Karate Kid movie, and they couldn't make a Karate Kid movie. So the ending of Nightmare 4 is the girl with like a Karate Kid-style headband just beating the shit out of Freddy. Yeah. So, I mean, it happens more frequently than you think. But what I was going to say was, I mostly agree with you in that I like the first Scream a lot. I think Scream 1's a really great movie, but I think what Wes Craven was trying to do with Scream just works better in New Nightmare, because the fact that he's actually in the movie, I think adds a much deeper thematic resonance than anything Scream's capable of, because he is very literally implicating himself in a tradition of horror that he helped popularize and doesn't feel comfortable with by the time this movie comes out. So one of the things about Craven's movies that are so fascinating and so interesting as far as horror goes is, compared to Friday the 13th or even some of the Halloween sequels, not so much the first one, but the sequels, there's kind of a puritanical morality to slashers. There's that idea of, like, you have sex, you go off alone, you do drugs or you drink, and the killer comes and gets you and he kills you. The first Nightmare doesn't really have that. It's not like the kids are doing anything bad or uncouth before they get killed. They just get targeted for reasons that they don't understand. And the first movie is entirely about this idea that parents will do anything they can to protect their children except just fucking listen to them. And because they don't listen to them, Freddy is able to kill them each individually. And New Nightmare is a really interesting inversion of that, where Heather in this is the exact opposite of Nancy and her parents, where Nancy's parents never really listened to anything she had to say about what was going on, and it was only after she goaded them that they started to reveal little bits and pieces about who Freddy was. But in this movie, Heather believes her son basically immediately. She trusts what he's saying. She starts doubting her own reality because of him. She starts to feel Freddy's presence basically from the jump of the movie. And even so, she's completely helpless to this more like ethereal version of Freddy that's sneaking into her life and killing people. And the fact that Craven himself is in it, and that he's writing the movie, and that these are the things that are allowing it to continue to creep in, I think it adds a really interesting emotional layer where we're not just talking anymore about horror movies and horror movie monsters and horror movie morality. We're talking about this idea of, like, is it ethical to make movies like this that ruin their stars' lives, that create panic about the children's media, that proliferate a kind of violence that Wes Craven wasn't sure he should have been doing in the first place, especially when you think about the exploitive horror movies he started making out. And I think raising all of those questions with actors playing themselves and having your own director in the movie as kind of the scapegoat for that is something far more courageous than any of the Scream movies do.
There is, like, if I were to level a complaint against this movie, in regards to, like, what Wes Craven's trying to do, is clearly somewhere along the way in the pitch, some of the teeth got taken out of the movie a little bit. I remember they did a whole, like, I want to say it's like a 2.5-hour documentary just going over all the Nightmare films, and, like, they showed some what do they call them? The little still drawings, storyboards they showed some like storyboards that had been drawn up based on earlier drafts of the script for this, and one of them was when you see Wes Craven for the first time, he's cut his eyelids off so he can't fall asleep, so he can finish writing the script. And I'm like, God damn.
Yeah.
Like, that's just, whoa. And they kind of take some of that energy back away from the movie that we get in the end result. But like, there's just so much going on in this that I just absolutely love, that really feels like it's delving into the thing that makes Freddy unique. I've seen interviews with Robert Englund, and he's talked about where like kids will come up to him and be like, "Can you beat Jason? Could you beat Michael?" Blah blah blah. And his answer was always, "Oh yeah, I'd destroy him because I'd get him in their dreams." It's like there is just something about Freddy that is just so like fundamentally broken that it's just unfair. And so I really love the way that this movie plays with that, particularly because we don't really get this, at least from memory, in the other Nightmare movies, where legitimately you do not know if the characters are dreaming at a certain point, because they spend so many times, and it could feel cheap, but I feel like it's done really well. They spend so much time tricking you into the, oh, now I'm awake moment. But no, now I'm really awake. To the point where, like, when the cops come and tell her that her husband's fucking dead, I legitimately didn't know if we'd be, like, confirming that or not. You know, because she wakes up after his death scene. And so it's like, is this part of the dream, or was that part of the dream, or what's what? And it's just, I love the fact that it just kind of leaves you so out there on your own.
Yeah, the only other one that does that is the first one. But yeah, continue.
Alfie, you were gonna say something.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, that's kind of my issue with it, is like, when you subscribe that, this sounds really interesting, right? But then in the process of watching the movie, her performance doesn't capture any of that dread at all for me. Like, it just feels like she really kind of give a fuck about her husband, which was, I thought was a bit funny when I was watching it. I was just like, damn, she kind of gets over this super fucking fast. And like, they didn't see that she was that bothered by the whole, like, she has that scene where she like pulls at Oprah and starts crying, but it seems more so that she's more so scared of Freddy than necessarily what just happened to supposed to be her husband. So it's one of those things where like it feels like there's really interesting ideas, and when you're describing of like the eyelid thing, Ian, I wonder like if the tone was off here, because like what it's telling me and the ideas of like the psychological horror, like the idea of these your own works of art coming to ruin and haunt your life, is a very like heavy topic, and I just don't feel it's treated with like any gravitas in this setting. And I don't think it's an excuse of the time period it came in out in either, because there's plenty of other horror movies around. There's like the first Halloween movie came out before this and had a way more serious tone than this. Like, I just don't buy it as something that I'm supposed to be fearful of or something that I'm supposed to be bothered by. It just makes it feel more like an excuse to get the gang back together and kind of be tongue-in-cheek about it.
See, I feel like the tongue-in-cheek, I'm just not seeing it there. And I guess it might just be like a, reputation versus the reality of the film itself kind of thing. Because I have that sometimes where, like, you kind of hear all this hype and stuff around a film, and then you watch it, and it's like, just doesn't deliver on that level for you. So that might be part of it. But I don't know, for what it's worth, I'd heard a lot about this film before I ever watched it. And yet I still, like, fell in love with it. So, I don't know, it just might be a case of your mileage may vary. I may agree with you a bit on the acting side of things. It's in a weird place, because the movie just, conceptually as it's written, you can't just recast the actress played Nancy. It needs to be the actress that played Nancy in the movies. But the thing is, right, she got her start from Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Like, it's just, great actors, those early movies don't necessarily yield. Like, Jamie Lee Curtis is a bit of the exception from the, like, started in slasher movies. Johnny Depp was the breakout star from the Nightmare on Elm Street movie franchise, and yet he clearly didn't show up here. because by the mid 90s he was way too big to come back to something like this. So you may just be dealing with like kind of the limitation of this is what the 6th film in the series. Getting the actors back for that is a bit of a demand if they have any, like, you know, not to dismiss her entirely, but like any substantial talent as actors. I think she's good in this. I enjoyed her in this. One thing I really do like about her in this is just how absolutely fucking ragged she looks and feels by the end of the movie. I feel like a lot of horror movies, you know, the like final girl or whatever, she gets like banged up and dirtied and everything, but like it's always in a way that feels kind of like, oh, like sexy or whatever. And this, she just looks like she's literally going through fucking hell and back. Like the clothing always rips in a very particular way in a lot of the other movies, whereas this just, that like cut on her forehead that she gets at first just never heals, and then like her hair starts going gray. It just, I don't know. There's some of it I'm really with her in this, and just kind of, I think she sells just the exasperated exhaustion of dealing with all of this. But I will still agree that I don't think she's like the greatest actress ever. So I'll maybe give her a little bit of ground there.
I'll agree with you on the husband thing. I do think that I think the sequence of the husband dying is incredible. I love everything about him falling asleep in the car and the hand coming out into his chest and shit. But I will agree that like the second after he dies, the movie doesn't really do a whole lot to deal with that outside of the funeral scene, which is also, I think, a really good scene. But you know, like as like a continuing emotional anchor for the movie, I don't think it really does much with it. But I like Heather Langenkamp in this. I think she's good. The scene that really stands out to me with her is actually really early on when she's doing the daytime talk show, and the guy keeps asking her questions, and she just is never able to finish a single thought that she has. And there's an interesting balance in that performance where you can see her getting agitated but kind of swallowing it because she's an actress and this is just kind of expected on daytime TV. And then when they bring Freddy out and they do that really incredible shot of like Freddy waving the claw as his silhouette is being captured, and there's a lot of like sinister energy to that. And I think she does a really good job of both being bothered in that moment while also understanding that she's sort of having to swallow how bothered and how trapped she feels in that moment. I can see people not clicking with her, but I do really like what she does in this, and I think she's given really good material, in part because she's also drawing from the real life experience of making the movie and a lot of her other real life stuff that goes into this. Like, she mentions that she's on TV now and she doesn't do movies anymore as part of the plot of this, and that's because that's what the actress was doing. There's a whole plot about a stalker phone call that turns out to be Freddy, but that's also a real thing that she was dealing with a show that she was on at around this time. So I think all of her reactions feel authentic because they are rooted in some kind of genuine authenticity from her experiences as an actress. And I think a lot of those layers probably make the performance better. Like, I don't think Heather Langenkamp's a great actress by any stretch, but I think the way this movie's designed, it doesn't really need her to be. It just needs her to be herself, and I think when she is herself, she does a really good job. Like you mentioned, Ian, with how ragged she gets. I also just love like how laser focused she is on the well-being of her kid the entire time. I love the interaction in the hospital when they're trying to like put the kid to sleep and she is like adamantly refusing to allow that to happen to him. I think all of that stuff is really good and really uncomfortable in the right sort of way. I also feel like she's not in enough of the Nightmare films for this to feel like she's just phoning it in. Because, like, unlike Jamie Lee Curtis, for example, like, she came back and did Halloween H2O because she wanted to do a thing to celebrate the movie that launched her career. But then she came back and did 4 more Halloween movies. You know, so like there's a big diminished return to this idea of like Laurie Strode is back in a Halloween movie because she's in like 5 of them, which she never really left. Compared to Heather Langenkamp, who is only in the first one, the third one, and then she's not in 4, 5, 6, and she shows back up for this one. So like there's a whole like decade where she is not in these movies.
Yeah, and that's like kind of the problem with like the Freddy franchise is it just keeps trying to tie him back to like Nancy's story and the origin stuff, and it like ultimately ended up feeling really limiting, and why I don't think those movies necessarily had the same level of legs as like the other slasher flicks did. Because, I mean, there's, 7... Even if you include the remake and Freddy vs. Jason, you got, 8 total Freddy movies, and, I think Jason's up to, 12 or something at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jason's got 12, and then Michael's got 13.
Yeah, so it's just, Freddy, even if you start counting, all the stuff, it doesn't really stack up, and it's because it tries to tie it so hard back to the original origin stuff. So having her come back for this, and again, it just being such a weirdly brave departure, for what it's worth, and kind of recognizing, oh, we've just got to kill Freddy. We've run out of ideas of what to do with this because they didn't want to hire good writers. I don't know. So they get Wes Craven back because I don't think Craven comes. I think Craven had basically abandoned the series at a certain point. So you get him back for this. Wes Craven's New Nightmare being the title of the movie, I think is a really cool touch. There's just so much going on here that it does just feel like such a brave departure that none of the other films of this era, of this genre, feel like they could make this work half as well as this does. You couldn't have actual Michael Myers falling around actual Jamie Lee Curtis without it just feeling like a sick joke. Whereas this actually playing on those innate ideas. That's what I think my favorite thing from this is, just the inherent idea of the evil spirit that haunts the nightmares, and it's always existed from the dawn of time, and now it just liked being Freddy Krueger because that inspired a generation of nightmares. And it says, no, you're not allowed to kill him. I'm gonna come back into the real world. I think was fucking hype. But maybe that's just me.
I also agree about when you were saying earlier about the scene in the interview in the talk show. That was my favorite scene in the movie as well. I thought that kind of that's the one where it hit that balance, and you have that shot of when Robert Englund's jumping around on stage and they just kind of slow down and you see the silhouette of Freddy and the theme plays. I thought that was really effective. It just never got back to that energy for me past that point.
I mean, that's fair.
The other thing about Robert Englund too is he'd been doing all of these movies, and so we've gotten more and more familiar with his take on Freddy, and they had become more and more funny. Like Dream Warriors is pretty fucked up. There's a scene in that movie where one of the guy's dreams, he rips all of his veins out of him and then uses them as a marionette to walk him to the edge of a tower and then cuts the strings so he jumps to his death. That's pretty fucked up. But after that, he becomes really, really funny, and he just starts making gags and stuff. Fucking Freddy vs. Jason, which comes after this, to be fair. There's a scene where he's shooting Jason around the boiler room while ping pong noise... And they play the pinball noises. They don't even hide the fact that they're just doing satire at a certain point. But with this one, Freddy as a malevolent spirit's really interesting, but also just this idea that Freddy is there in your dreams within this universe, where you fall asleep and Freddy shows up in your dreams and he kills you. And then if you want to kill him, you bring him out of the dreams into the real world where he has no power. That's the whole thing in the first movie. But when you think about it from like that metatextual level of what this movie is doing, when you're in a movie, there is no outside reality. There is no reality he can be brought into to be killed. And I think that's part of what's really creepy about this one is the movie is basically making you feel like you're never safe, where like Freddy's face will appear in the sky, or there are moments like where the husband's driving back, where you're oscillating between dreaming and waking, and it does a really good job of, like you said, fooling you into thinking one reality versus another, or opening with the making of that Freddy mechanical claw before turning back and realizing that they're just on a set, but then later something happens with it to make you think that you're not really in reality and you might be in a dream. The bouncing back and forth between like fiction and reality in the context of a movie that's trying to be as quote-unquote real as possible is really unnerving. And I think it does a really good job in that way of like interrogating what exactly the influence of someone like Freddy is. Because so much of what people say to Heather throughout this is, do you let your kids watch your movies? And this weird notion that like the kid is unwell not because something is harming him, but because the movies have made him that way. And that there is this sort of moral outcry about kids watching scary movies. I remember when Freddy vs. Jason was coming out, and a lot of us were like, we were like in fucking like elementary school, middle school. I don't remember what year this was. And people were legitimately skipping school to go see Freddy vs. Jason, and they were too young for it. And I remember there was a whole thing where like there were news broadcasts about like kids being delinquents going to see Freddy vs. Jason, and the school had like no one who showed up that day because they were all in the theater watching Freddy vs. Jason. And
awesome.
I think. Right, I know, it's the coolest thing ever. But like living in that moment, particularly in the 90s, during the violent video games and violent movies and that sort of political discourse, channeling that into a movie where like everyone just assumes the corrupting force is the movie itself, and then the movie itself is about how this is created. By watching this, you are creating a corrupting force. That sort of cyclical nature of it and that weird metatextual level, I really, really like that. I think that's part of what makes this one so interesting compared to Scream, because like in Scream, you're never fooled into thinking you're not watching a movie. Whereas this, I think it is very overtly like the line between watching the movie and thinking about reality is very blurred.
For sure. No, I absolutely love that about this movie, is just how bizarre it gets with just fucking with your perception of things. One thing that I think it does really well in regards to that is this is probably one of the best like paced as for delivery of, you know, gore and shit movies I've ever seen for like a horror movie. Because like so often my problem with horror movies is you'll have directors say something was like, oh well, you know, you've really got to like build the anticipation, you don't want to just give someone blood and guts, but really what they mean by that is we didn't have much of a budget, so we just shot a lot of bullshit and waited to like one big payoff of blood and guts. This does a really good job of like it gives you just little snippets, little like bits of this is fucked up, this is gonna fuck with you, this, oh, okay, here's the scary shit. But it's like paced out throughout the entire movie, so it doesn't feel like it's just kind of stringing you along. It really does just keep delivering scares of one form or another, whether that's like Freddy actually showing up or someone actually dying, or just, oh shit, that kid's really high up there. And I think that like just really, really helps and works and just kind of guides you along throughout the time, and I really, really appreciate that. This is probably, I think this might be the best paced horror movie I can, at least I can think of.
I mean, you know what I'm going to say, right? It's like it's this and Halloween.
You say so. Halloween.
I think you are both wonderful human beings and are entitled to those opinions.
So
I would not put this and Halloween 1 and pacing next to each other, in my opinion. But that's good. I get the argument.
Alfie, I am curious though, because you said that this one hasn't really landed for you, but like,
Yes.
what about this do you feel like doesn't work?
It's just one of those things where I feel like if I read this script, right, if I saw this on paper and I'd be reading this, I'd be like, oh, this is a compelling script. This is a compelling idea. I want to see this movie get made. And Wes Craven is a very talented director. I would never take that away from him. So he is absolutely more than capable of getting this on screen in an engaging way for me. But you get scenes like near the tail end of this movie where the gloved hand of Freddy comes from the sky and starts lifting the kid up and up. And I'm like, okay, what do you want me to react to this movie? Do you want me to be engaging with this in terms of the horror of it? Do you want me to be laughing at this? Do you want like what mood do you want for me? And if we're leaning into the B movie mode of this is Freddy Krueger, we're now entering his domain more and more as the movie goes on, to the point where at the very final act we're in his demon castle where we're dealing with this very almost like labyrinth level of like practical set design, and I can go for that. I can vibe for that, but it feels at odds with what you're trying to get me in early with the movies, with the real life consequences with the people involved, with this idea of it trying to feel this level of dread. That again, Freddy has like the most banger concept ever. It's a slam dunk. Like, you are never more vulnerable than when you are sleeping. Like, it's such an easy way to make him feel threatening and scary and inevitable and powerful. And just, I've never seen a single Freddy Krueger take where I feel like I'd be scared of this guy. Which is like, I don't understand how there's like so many of these movies and none of them have hit that for me. Where like, you can't do anything against him, and yet I see these movies and they're doing pretty fine against him. Like, he should be in the fucking domain, and they're just fucking around. Like, he has to use Reed Richards' ass stretch to grab the little kid, and then the snakes appeared, and it's just like, it's such. And again, it isn't to do with the time period. It isn't to do with a limitation of practical effects or anything. I prefer that, and I think it looks more interesting when it's a dream where you can excuse things looking kind of off because it's that dream logic, right? I think there's actually a texture to that. I prefer that than, say, like the remake Nightmare on Elm Street, which I watched as well. I think this has a more tangible reality when it does do the kills, right? But I don't find them particularly creative. Like, that car kill, I didn't find particularly creative. Like, I think it's a scary idea, but you show the glove hand coming out near his dick, and I'm immediately not taking it seriously. I'm like, I'm supposed to laugh at this. Like, it's like every time there's meant to be a moment that this could be scary, it's undercut. And the idea that this Freddy is meant to be the more darker one, this is meant to be the horror one, I understand he's not cracking wise as much. He's not saying like, welcome to prime time, bitch, right? But then at that point, if you're still doing the silly tone, but he's a less engaging character as Freddy, I'm kind of like, well, I'm not really getting either mode here. I'm not getting the scary movie I want. I'm not getting the psychological version I want. And I'm not getting the silly, pure, fun, like, campy Freddy either. He's not even wearing his hat for most of it at that point. I'm like, God damn it. I don't want to see your bald ass. Like, put the fucking hat on at least for most of it. So, like, that's just where I'm at with it. And I think it's purely a taste thing for me. I do have some, like, basic just structural issues, and my biggest issue overall that I do think holds it back the most is the performances. And it's not just Heather. I don't want to just single her out. I think across the board, the only person in this that I think is actually really giving me something is Robert Englund, and funny enough, Wes Craven. Like, everyone else is letting me down.
But before you go into the structural stuff that you have issue with, because I want to hear that. I'm curious what you mean. But before you say that, I do want to just respond to the silly tone thing, because I think for me, the reason that stuff works is I think there's a difference between humor undercutting a serious moment versus using humor to be playful about the ideas you're trying to examine. So, like, for example, MCU movies are the ones that I think textbook example of like you cannot have a dramatic beat because the dramatic beat has to always be targeted with self-aware humor all the time. That the beat happens and then everyone is expected to stop and look at the absurdity of it, versus something like this where I think the fact that so many of the kills are playful and that they're funny, I think is actually part of the text and part of what makes it interesting. Because if the overarching idea of the movie is horror movies have an effect on children and our sense of self that we haven't done enough to examine, which is a thing Craven's always been really interested in, then him both doing kills that are very silly, like Freddy picking the kid up and dropping him through the sky and stuff, in the middle of situations that are like life or death serious in what is ostensibly reality, I think he is calling attention to that. I think he's calling attention to this feeling of like, you're laughing at this, you're enjoying this, and the circumstances are deeply serious, and that dissonance is the space that horror movies play in, and whether or not they should is kind of the question that the movie is wanting to wrestle with through all the way through, where Heather's never treating that situation in a humorous way like an MCU character would. She's playing it 100% legit. She is seeing her kid in danger, and the thing that's endangering him is this clown of a person in this really bad visual effect of bringing him up and putting him down through the streets. And that sort of tension, that absurdity of like, this is life or death, but this is also really funny, and whether or not these two things can coexist, I think that's what the movie is about ultimately.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that like really makes Freddy stand out from the rest of them. You know, Michael is just a pure psychopath. Jason is a fucking zombie or whatever, puritanical. Maybe you could make the argument for like Leatherface or something, but like Freddy is just purely a sadist. And this one you might have it at like his most just detached, but he's still got it because it's technically not the same Freddy anymore, right? It's just this spirit of malice that comes for us and haunts us. So like the, you know, picking him up and putting him down on the highway, that scene's already pretty fucking intense before you get to that point. So then adding that moment of levity is just, you know, he's dangling him, right? He's not killing the kid there. I don't think he's planning to kill the kid there. He's extenuating and bringing and prolonging the moment of tension by just fucking with stuff. And I think that is just very particular to Freddy, of just how sadistic and like, this is what I do for fun, is with Freddy. I really love that. The moment you mentioned earlier with like the car scene, like, oh, it's coming up, it's going for his dick. That's supposed to make me laugh. Well, it's interesting to parallel it because arguably the most famous shot from the first Nightmare is the hand coming up between the legs out of the bathtub.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it is a direct parallel to that of like, why is it like, I don't even know if it's necessarily supposed to be read as funny in that moment, but if that's the read, that's fine. Why is it funny when it's a man, but it's uncomfortable and creepy and like iconic when it was a teenage girl? So what is that?
Right, for just the shot of the hand in the bathtub is just more interesting. Like that angle of that and like the vulnerability of that just feels more like, oh, this is a threat. This is something where it's rising from the depths. Like there's just more going into that. Like they have a moment here where he fucking itches his sack before it gets him, dude. Like that's the kind of what I mean, right? Like it's not shot from the same angle. So like I get what you're saying. I just think on a craft level, it's not hitting for me in the same way. Would be my difference there.
I agree that the shot in the original is a better shot, but I also am with Ian in the sense that like there is something intentional going on there of like, why are we going from teenage girl crotch shot to grown man crotch shot? And the the beauty and the sort of voyeurism of the first one and the base and just utility of the second one, and how Craven has evolved from, was this voyeuristic shot the problem in the first place? Because I think another way to read that is, you look at that, and Alfie, I think everyone has the same reaction you do of like, this is just that shot but worse. But then I think you do have to take the next step with how meta this movie is and say, but why is it worse? Is it worse for a purpose? And I think it is. I think it's worse because the idea is this imminent danger? Is this thing that Freddy is breaching into reality? Is this a thing that should be voyeuristic in the first place?
Mm-hmm. One thing that oh, sorry, Alfie, go ahead.
It's okay. You can continue.
Well, mine's kind of breaking away from that a little bit. So if you had,
all right, I just want to say it is why it's an interesting movie to talk to, and I do think it's something where going over like this is a more interesting experience. Just kind of analyzing it. My only point is, in the moment when I'm watching it, how it's coming across to me isn't giving me the, okay, this movie is justifying me investing harder into asking those questions, because it's entertaining me on a level where I'm willing to kind of lean forward in my chair and engage with it a little bit more. Like, there was never a scene that made me kind of go like, oh fuck, all right, I'm here, right? And like, all the best kind of movies, or movies that really try and like engage me to think about it like that, normally have a moment like that, even if it's at the very fucking end of the movie. Like, this just didn't have that scene to make me want to engage in it and talk about it like we are now, without me just being like, I see what it's doing, I understand it, but it's just not engaging me.
That's fair. The thing I was gonna say is just one thing I like about the scene with the husband dying, and also the scene where she wakes up from the earthquake before she goes into the hospital and has that little fight with Freddy, is I like the fact that this one just breaks the fucking rules of Freddy Krueger. So, like, killing the husband is not something he should have been capable of doing. Because Nancy is the one afraid of Freddy Krueger, right? It's not him. He doesn't... He's still making the hand and stuff. You know, he still thinks this is all just fun and games. When she wakes up in the house after the earthquake and goes to the closet, and he just like comes out and it's like, I forget the fucking line, but he throws one of his few bitches in there. Like, no one brought him into the real world, and that, from what we see, like, she may have dreamed the earthquake or whatever, but from what we see, that is supposed to be reality. So there's just this like this breaking of the rules in a way that, you know, would piss me off if it didn't feel so earned, with how meta the whole fucking thing is. So, like, you're almost meant to be more outraged about just how fucking broken Freddy is becoming in this movie. Where he can just slip into reality now at whim and do it just because it doesn't need... He doesn't need everyone to be afraid of him. He doesn't need to work on them in their dreams until he can start creeping into reality. He can just come in and take you out while you're driving the one time you're tired, you know? And I thought that was just interesting and pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So of the big three slashers, if we're just kind of talking about them as like movie characters, all of the Halloween movies kind of treat Michael with an exaggerated, abstract self-importance. That in every movie, he's meant to symbolize like death or rage or hatred in a small town, or like he's always just like a lightning rod for a bigger idea, which is why his kind of lack of personality is never an issue in those movies, because he's just manifesting the conflict of the movie. Jason has like the roughest go of it because Jason's not really Jason until the third movie. And even so, those movies don't really get good until like 4, 5, and 6. And he's visually iconic in a certain way, but it takes so long to get there. And all of the movies have that same sort of camper structure to them. So like teens come to a camp, Jason shows up, Jason kills them. That he's never really grounded in a bigger idea. He's always just being reinvented every single movie because they're constantly trying to figure out what's making those movies work and what's not. I think that's part of why the best ones are the ones where he's least like himself. Like Jason Lives is amazing, but he's basically Frankenstein's monster in that movie. It's awesome. But Freddy is the only one of the big three that has like a personality from day one, and a personality from day one that really doesn't change. Like you could argue that campy Freddy is a different character than first movie Freddy, but I just don't think that's true when you watch like 1, 2, and 3 back to back. I think he is just the same person all the way through, and part of the reason why the remake is so bad is it doesn't take into account that Freddy's personality of being sarcastic and funny and throwing out bitches and stuff in the middle of dialogue just makes him naturally more charismatic, and it makes it harder to deal with serious subject matter like that movie wants to do. So importantly, in the first Nightmare on Elm Street, they never say Freddy is a child molester. They say he's a child murderer or a child killer. But the fact that he molests kids is always just subtext in the movies. It's never confirmed. The remake overtly says that he's a molester. Now, if you're making a series of exploitative slasher movies in the 80s, and you say he's a killer, but he's also like touching teenage girls inappropriately, it is both inviting and unsettling. And you can play and dance in that reality, which is what's so fun about the movies. When you say he's just a molester, and he starts doing that and throwing puns at you, then suddenly your movie feels like it's not taking him seriously enough. All that to say, I think New Nightmare does a really good job of keeping the fact that he is so playful or sadistic, like you said, while also making him actually scary. I think the scene in the hospital where he's walking on the side of the wall and you see his first like big reveal, and then when he kills the babysitter and it recreates the kill on the wall that they do in the first movie, but the blood is a lot more subdued, and then when she's dead, we're in the kid's perspective, just slowly inching ourselves for like a full 30 seconds over the hospital bed to finally see the pool of blood, like we're a kid peeking our eyes through a horror movie as a kid as the blood rushes through. I think that's a really effective way to both comment on what he's trying to do, of like put us in the headspace of like, what does this movie do to children, while at the same time making Freddy scary and retroactively commenting on the stuff that he was trying to do in the first movie that the later parts of the franchise seem to kind of miss the balance on.
I do really love the line that she has when the one doctor's like, "You told me you don't let him watch any of your movies. Every kid knows who Freddy Krueger is." Because yeah,
right,
100%. I don't remember watching any of the Nightmare movies when I was growing up and going to like elementary school, but goddamn if I didn't know who Freddy Krueger was at recess. You know, like that's just like I didn't need to know. Maybe I like caught glimpses of it when my brother or whatever was watching it, but like I didn't sit down and watch those movies until I was, you know, probably in like early high school, maybe middle school. The first Nightmare movie I watched probably all the way through is probably Freddy versus Jason. And I would have been like 13 by that point. There is just something to the, like, he just became such a cultural icon that like everything started, you know, having their take on Freddy, and like we've still done it, you know, all these years later. This is a bit dated now because the show's like, this episode's probably over 10 years old, but like fucking Scary Terry from Rick and Morty just being there, like Freddy Krueger pastiche is really good. I remember when I was working at Goodwill, and this is one of those ideas of I want to get a costume budget and make a sketch of it. When I was working at Goodwill, and we'd get like a really sick video game, like a rare video game for PS2 or whatever, like disc system. and be like, all right, let's go. This is going to go so well on the website. Then we'd flip the disc over and we'd just like look at it and get so disappointed. And my one buddy at work, CJ, was like, man, fucking Freddy Krueger and Edward Scissorhands played with this.
That's good. I like that.
I want to get a fucking budget and just get, like, you know, a GameStop and have Freddy Krueger and Edward Scissorhands come in and get mad that they can't sell any of their games. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, there's just something to, like, the cultural impact of Freddy Krueger that is, you know, particular to kids. Before we did this episode tonight, Leah was... we were watching Paw Patrol because Sabrina's really liked that lately. And Leah goes, grown-ups don't like Paw Patrol. And my wife goes, yeah, well, you know, it's made for kids. What can I tell you? And there's other movies made for adults. And I was like, yeah, we watched a really, really scary one the other night. And I'm like, God, what would even happen to my kid if I started playing New Nightmare for her?
Do it! Prove Wes Craven wrong!
Oh boy.
Oh, that's fucking hilarious.
You know, just like what would that even do to her? Like, you know, there's a difference between like learning about the existence of the character, but then like actually watching the movies at a young age is just so horrific. And I remember like having a kid in my neighborhood who like the family had the movies on VHS, so he'd like watched them on his own at points, and we're like, really? Goes, yeah. Like,
yeah, I mean,
none of us had the balls to ask to go watch it with him, right? Like...
I mean, when I was a kid, before I had seen any of the Freddy movies, I was terrified of just Freddy's face, you know? Like, the burned skin and the glove with the blades on it. Like, I saw Halloween when I was way too young, so I've always been really afraid of Michael Myers. But, like, one of my most vivid memories as a kid is my dad sitting me down when I was really young and we were watching The Omen. And there's that scene where the music kicks in and the lady who's trying to look after Damien tries to push his mom out of the hospital window. And I was so freaked out by it, I just refused to leave the room because I didn't want to move. I didn't want to go into any dark corner. I didn't want to turn out the light and see something scary, because the horror movies just have that visceral reaction to you when you're younger. And I think we can't just pretend like the parents who complain about violence in video games and movies are completely wrong. Like, I think it's disingenuous to pretend like movies and video games and culture have no impact on kids' psychologies. The problem is just like, where do you draw the line? And you can do it on an individual basis, but then when you have access to things widely, like in a movie theater, how do you curtail that, and how do you do what's best for everybody? And horror movies are, for a lot of people, like their entryway into watching adult things, moving from the kid stuff to the adult stuff, because a horror movie is like the first temptation. It's the first time where something is explicitly not for kids, but at the same time is always made from the sensibility of like, this is for a teenager who's sneaking it into his VHS player when his parents are asleep. All horror movies are juvenile, but they are released in a manner where kids can't see them, and that's part of the joy of them. And circle back again, this is again why I think New Nightmare is so good, is because I think it's doing so much that the original movie did, and it's messing with how it's presented, and it's anchoring you in the perspective of a mom and her relationship to her kid. And when you watch the original Nightmare on Elm Street, that's your first temptation. That's your, I saw this movie when I was way too young for it, and it made me love Freddy Krueger movies. But then you get older, it's 10 years later, and you watch New Nightmare, and suddenly you're like, okay, I start to understand now why my parents struggled with the idea of letting me watch horror movies.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where it's like really hard to just deny people what like you got to experience, right?
Yeah.
I think, like every kid, I think it's just like a rite of passage of like every kid eventually watches a horror movie that they're not ready for.
Right.
And I don't know, I think that's like just a cool thing that you gotta kind of like, not necessarily make room for, but you might arguably be doing more harm in development by like trying to cut it off to a certain extent. I don't know. It's a hard question to answer. But I don't know. Fuck it. I like this movie, and I'm not going to feel bad about it. So that's how I feel.
If you're all a bunch of scaredy cats that didn't
Yeah.
watch enough hard movies when you were little, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, what would you watch? What was the first horror movie Alfie watched?
It was like the fucking
British cities.
It was like a British werewolf movie about like soldier werewolf guys.
Oh, okay.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
But it was like they were like a bunch of soldiers that were out like in the woods somewhere, and then like a werewolf attack happened, and they were getting like mauled in their like tents and shit. And I think one of the Underworld movies or something like that, and I think one of the Friday the 13th movies as well.
To your credit, though, like 70s and 80s British folk horror movies are fucked up.
Oh
Like-
yeah, you guys
like
know about
stuff like
Peter
a Wicker
Nasties, right?
Man. Yeah, no, like there's so much guys we're doing over there. That's just like this is
Oh,
just
yeah.
nihilistic for the sake of nihilistic. That's so funny.
We have a very lax attitude towards like children and horror in comparison to you guys. Like it was much more just kind of like, oh, they're fine. They can tell it's not real. They don't really give a fuck. It's scarier being English and living in England than anything they could show. Like it's always fucking raining anyway. Show up Dracula, it just prepares them for what the weather's going to be like.
Yeah, I feel like after Margaret Thatcher, there's nothing scarier you could put on your TV. So fair.
That's fair.
Exactly. He gets it.
It's true. It's true.
Oh no, I don't know. I still really like this one. This still remains my favorite of the Nightmare
Yeah.
films. There's things I liked about the remake. More so just in the fact that like they set it up like they were gonna try to redeem Freddy, and then they said no, actually they doubled down. I kind of appreciated that.
So, in context, though, it's so fucking stupid because they have like 5 seconds of doubt of like, oh no, what if you executed an innocent man? But then immediately Freddy is starting to do pedophile shit, and the movie's like, oh no, never mind, the parents were 100% right.
Yeah,
They were cooking.
I mean that's just such a
They literally.
that's just such a Michael Bay thing of like maybe entertain an interesting idea for all of 5 seconds.
There's so much wrong with that movie, but one of the best things is there's a line where someone early on talks to Freddy, and he's like, "What should we do now?" And she's like, "Fuck you," and he's like, "That sounds fun." I'm like, you can't advertise your movie as not Campy Freddy when he's got lines like that. That's just not cool.
I don't know. They have a hard time with it because like I feel like the reaction to this to an extent, but I feel like this walks the line a bit better. But it just works also because it's not really Freddy anymore. But there's like that analysis of what made this stop working? Like what made the Friday the 13th movies stop working? What made Nightmare stop working? And it's like, oh, well, it's just Freddy just got too funny. And like, did he though? Like, was that, not saying that's wrong, but like, was that the core problem, or was it you just ran out of ideas and kept like doing the exact same story over and over and over again? You know.
So to answer your question, because I have seen all of them now very recently, and I have very strong opinions on how they're good and how bad they are. To be honest with you, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies are probably the most consistent out of any of the slashers. All of them are like solid B+ movies with a couple great ones and one genuinely terrible one. But all of them are basically kind of even keel. The problem with the Freddy movies is kind of the same problem with the Michael Myers movies, where they knew what they had with the first one, and every time they started to try and make some sort of mythological reason for why he does what he does, it stops working. So, like, for example, the first one, they have the thing where they pull him out from the dream into the real world, and then they think they killed him, but then the ending is kind of a fake out. The second one is a complete departure from that. It's nothing like any of the other movies. It's a body horror movie about a kid going through puberty, and his manifestation of puberty is becoming Freddy Krueger. Like, it's got nothing to do with any of the other Nightmare movies at all. Then the third one has this thing where, and you and I've talked about this before, where you get his origin about his mom being locked into an insane asylum over a long weekend and being raped hundreds of times, and Freddy is the bastard child of that. But then at the end of that movie, the way to kill him, quote unquote, is to lay his bones to rest, which they do. So then the question becomes, okay, well, how do you revive him? You want to know how they revive him in the fourth one? Do you want to guess how they revive him in the fourth one?
He's born again?
No. So what happens in the fourth one is that a dog pisses fire on his grave, and then she's come back to life.
Yeah, no, that sounds great.
Yeah, and then like the sixth one, the final nightmare, is he's got 3 demons of hell in him, or like 3 dream demons in him or something, and he can only be killed by his daughter that he suddenly has for reasons now. The Nightmare movies in general are pretty consistent, but the reason I think a lot of people lost patience with them was every single time you made one of these movies, you killed Freddy off, and every single time you had to make another movie, you had to come up with some kind of excuse for why he's back. At least Jason has the excuse of every movie is basically a different movie. So even though they're in canon with each other, they do so many time skips, and they do so many reboots, and they do so many reinterpretations that it almost doesn't matter. With Freddy, it's supposed to be this continuity in the same way it is with Halloween, but in Halloween, you've got an instant buy-in of like, Michael just doesn't die. You thought you killed him, he's not actually dead. There's never a movie where they're like, this is how you kill Michael Myers. But every Freddy movie is like, this is how you kill Freddy Krueger.
Mm-hmm. I do think the final thought I had on New Nightmare is, I was a little disappointed that Robert Englund didn't get to kill himself. That would have been like an opportunity.
I thought they were heading though.
Yeah, because like he just kind of, the last time you see him being himself in the movie is just like when he's looking at that painting that he's making. And again, like, I'm not sure if this would have been in the original script or something. It just feels like it's set up for the chance of Freddy to tear his way out of that painting and just start fucking killing Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
It could have been real cool too, because you could have had like England putting on the makeup himself, and then like the real scary Freddy kills the campy Freddy or some shit. That would have been dope. I feel like that's just a bit of a wasted opportunity.
It would have been like, the I don't know if you've seen it, Godzilla, I forget, Final Wars, where Godzilla kills the American Godzilla.
Yeah.
It would have been pretty sick to see that.
Yeah, I would have appreciated.
Or like Klaus, where it's Morris and Klaus versus Coca-Cola Santa.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I agree with you. I was hoping that would kick in.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. Like between that and Wes Craven, I feel like he just maybe like took the foot off the gas just maybe a little bit too much. They maybe like cleaned up things a little more than they should have. Maybe gone a little bit harder here or there. But hey, what can you do? Final thought. What'd you guys think of the new claw hand thingy that he's got going on in this?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it looks really fucking sick. After like 7 movies of like the dirty glove with the knives on it, I thought this looked way cooler.
Yeah.
I can vibe with the claw, and I can vibe with the new face makeup. I think that's good as well. Even the coat, it was kind of an odd color choice. I would have gone for like a brown or like a darker color for the coat instead of the blue. But
Black, but okay.
It's not really black. Yeah, but my biggest issue is just, man, he needs to keep that hat on. He's just a bald bun guy. If he doesn't have that, the hat makes him Freddy Krueger.
Just the fucking robot chicken bit of, Daddy, I got you a sweater. I picked your outfit for today. Oh, baby, fedoras don't really go with sweaters. It's just something to it. Like, collectively it shouldn't, but it does. It works.
Final thought. One of my biggest problems with the original Nightmare on Elm Street is I just don't think John Saxon plays a very convincing dad or a very convincing police officer. He's really monotone and boring. But that said, I think he's really good in this. I like the scene a lot where he's giving Nancy, or not Nancy, he's giving Heather her pep talk in the playground. And then when he's the conduit for transitioning from reality to fiction, where he starts calling her Nancy and turns back into the role of the sheriff, I thought all of that was really, really cool.
Mm-hmm. No, that's again just where I love it, where like, you know, reality is shifting. My favorite sequence, I think, is her taking the Valium and going under the covers, and it just turns into like that slide and teleportation to the world. That's so fucking cool.
That's so good.
I think what the movie really needed, I think we can all just be honest here about why Alfie didn't like the movie. So he was really hoping that the stuffed T-Rex would show up at the end and actually be the way that they got out of the dream world. He just didn't want to admit to that.
Well, my thing is, I guess, if anyone wants to watch Scream 4, spoilers, I guess, is the pitch that I kept having throughout the movie, where I was just like, oh, this would have been more interesting, would have been the folly that it was that you get fucking Nancy go fucking crazy, and she's actively doing the dream shit is all a dream, or if keep up with interpretation, right? Maybe Freddy is around, but she's fucking walking through her. You get that so many fucking people do the girl Freddy cosplay, man. Have the original fucking final girl put the glove on and some shit. Like, why not? Like, does they have that bit with the kid where he's fucking he pulls out the knives and he starts coming. I thought that was an effective scene. I felt like the idea of like Freddy working through other people. I don't know. I felt the idea that if you had hard committed to someone just fully being enwrapped by the idea of like I'm forced to be the final girl my whole life. What if I want to be the fucking slasher? Then people will pay attention to me. Like that kind of idea, I think would be interesting. Wes Craven, I think, agreed with me because then he does that in one of the latest Scream movies, and I thought that was my favorite one. So I was kind of just hoping it to be more like that.
And I mean, I think that's interesting, but I think that's also why like New Nightmare is one movie and Scream 4 is a different movie, because I think if you did that here, it fundamentally changes what the movie is about.
Yeah, it does, for sure.
Then you wouldn't get the end where she's reading the script. I fucking loved that.
Oh, that's so good.
The VO of her, like, she realized she was holding her very life in her hands.
Yes. Ah! And then you, like, at that point, you really are in that weird sort of reciprocal thing of, like, there is no way out of this. This is all just in Freddy's world at that point.
Yeah, no, that was fucking perfect. The reading the script and then just, like, everything in the nightmare world just working against her. She's trying to run to the oven and the stairs just start melting. It's just so fucking surreal. I love it. All right. That's the end. We're gonna do ratings. I'll give this movie 4 out of 5. Mechanical gloves that kill a guy who looks oddly like James Van Der Beek.
I'll be right there with you and give it 4 out of 5 dead babysitters.
And for this one, again, I'm still going to stick to my guns here, even though I think you both made some very interesting analysis. I do think none of what you said was wrong, but I just didn't enjoy it, so I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 uncaring widows.
Okay. Speaking of uncaring widows, how'd your wife like it?
She also didn't like it. She also did not like it. Damn. And she's the horror Freddy gal, so
okay.
I felt bad for her because she's like, oh, I love Freddy so much, he's my favorite horror character, and none of the movies are really hitting for what she wants out of it, which I guess Is she a Dream Warriors person? I feel like most people that don't like this like Dream Warriors. The one that she's liked the most, I think, was the remake because she got to watch that when it came out. Okay. I think she just wants Freddy to go a little harder with the kills.
Yeah, no, it's a fair take. Freddy's one of those harder ones to really nail down. Like the concept just is maybe too good for the writers that are doing it sometimes.
You guys were talking about like the why does it keep going, and I like what was the thing here, and I generally think just by reading up on it, I think it was at a steady pace until you got to the fucking 2000s, and then all the rights issues started happening, and they're in rights limbo hell because I think the world is primed for a new one of these. I think a fucking new Nightmare movie. I don't know, Steve. You're right. We shouldn't be reusing fucking new IP shit. We shouldn't be. But I do think this is a case where there's a lot of the idea is so strong. You could do a completely different take with a fresh voice, by a new young director or something. And I think you could make this really fucking good.
Here's what I'll say. As long as we are living in a world, and this will bring us full circle, as long as we're living in a world where studios can fire actors for speaking out against genocide and then use the name of an artist to tout their IP slop and sell you generic nostalgia bait, I do not want to see Wes Craven's work in corporate hands doing that for anybody. And I think if you are a self-respecting artist, then you should not sign up for it.
That is completely fair as well. It just makes me sad because I'm like, man, you could have made a good one.
Freddy, I need to see if I can find some Freddy fan films or something. I feel like there's got to be a lot of potential for that, or like for Freddy to go for like animated might be a good route.
There was one that was being made a while ago that I don't know if it got it. I remember Cosplay Crest did like a video about it, and the makeup looked really good, but I don't know if they ever went anywhere.
Yeah. All right. Well, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I am the champion of nightmares.
Bitch.
And I am the Luddite.
Bitch. And we are your Geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things. Bitch.